Welcome to this episode of Kennedy Saves the World. For a little over half the country, they have something to toast. Every hour is happy hour for people who voted for Donald Trump, and for the rest of the liberal chattering class, they're still very dejected. And I think today they're drinking Jimmy Kimmel's tears. Oh. Brian Brenberg is back, host of The Bottom Line.
Occasional fill-in host for The Bottom Line.
Cheers.
Full-time
The Big
host
Money Show
of The Big Money Show.
It's an ongoing joke
It's right.
On Kennedy Saves the World.
But I appreciate that.
I've made Brenberg a spicy fall mule. So it's a nice spicy ginger beer with some cranberry juice, muddled mint, and lime.
Fragrant mint.
Fresh mint.
Freeze-dried
mint.
It came in the room and it was just like, all of a sudden the day changed with that.
Did you feel
that
like you
aroma.
were in a Scope bottle?
Like I took a full bath of Scope this morning. Brushed my teeth with the toothbrush that Pee Wee used on Big Adventure.
Yeah.
It's like so big, it just freshens everything.
That just reminds me of something funny before we get into the hot topics. So my grandparents always used Listerine.
Oh, yeah.
Back when Listerine tasted like kerosene. Like,
ooh.
I remember as a kid, like, oh, mouthwash, cool. Like, you're an adult. And I put it in my mouth and it burned like fire.
Yes.
And I was wounded emotionally and physically, and I spit it out. And
funny.
I was like, why would anyone ever think this is a good idea?
But there's something about the burning too. It makes you feel like you're doing something, like something is happening
that was
in
the
here.
mentality.
It hurts, but like it's got to be good.
Maybe that's what we've lost touch with. Maybe like we're so comfortable now. I went to a jiu-jitsu studio in Austin a couple weeks ago. And the whole motto is, one motto is be hard to kill, which I respect.
Oh, that's a good motto.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't think of it in those terms. The other was learn to be comfortable with discomfort.
Yes.
And we're too comfortable, I think.
I still think some of the best feelings in the world are like the soreness 2 days after a great workout. Like it doesn't hurt, but there's a pain there, but you're like, that's a good pain.
Yeah.
Something right happened.
I once threw my neck out sneezing while I was on a cordless phone. That's not a good sore.
That's the
bad pain. That's a bad pain.
In so many ways, it must have been a heck of a sneeze, though, which I do respect good sneezes. I don't get the sneeze where you're like, what did you just, nothing happened
there. Why do
there.
people hold in?
Your body is trying to do something.
That's the weirdest thing.
Let it do it.
Yeah,
Work
absolutely.
with your body.
Yeah, it's like it's expelling. Okay. And I feel like when you withhold a sneeze, it's saying a lot about you.
The only person I've ever been on TV with who sneezed on air, by the way. And it was like, you was so magnificent. You like spun her, you used a sneeze to like spin around. And then you came back around. It's like, that's the best TV sneeze you could ever have.
Sometimes you have to lean in.
You got to go with the grain.
You're absolutely
and that's what you did.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
So I, like you, have teens in the house.
Yes.
And one of the teens is in college. And she right now has access to sturdy Midwesterners. So politically, I don't worry about her as much because she's coming to different conclusions based on the people she's surrounded by. There are a lot of farmers and outdoor people that she's with, and I think that's great.
Yeah.
Because they tend to look at the country and politics through a more practical, personal lens.
Agreed. Yep.
The other teen is in a New York City public school, and so I need some data from you because we've been having some pretty active discussions about tax policy. And so in her mind, Donald Trump being reelected means that rich people will no longer pay taxes.
None at all.
And so, she believes the 400,000 line. She's like, if you make less than 400,000, now you're going to pay more taxes because Trump is giving tax cuts to the rich.
Yeah. I mean, I don't.
Did the first round of Trump tax cuts benefit more than the 1%?
The first round of Trump tax cuts benefited people in that middle class range the most. Just on a percentage basis, they got the biggest cut, actually. Rich people got a tax cut, too.
Why didn't that have a better publicist?
I don't think it. I think it actually had a good publicist. Like, okay, so again, go back to like sturdy Midwest people. Mm-hmm. They loved it. They knew they had more money in their pockets.
Look at Wisconsin. Look at Michigan. Look at pretty much everywhere but Minnesota and Illinois.
Yeah.
But they voted for him because their personal finances were in better shape, in part because of the tax cuts. before COVID during his presidency.
Yeah. So like I think one of the best parts about people, you mentioned like they're outdoors. One of the best parts about people who aren't in the elite bubbles, I guess you could say, is they have other things to do with their lives. Like they don't spend all of their time obsessing over the messaging of politics.
Yes.
So when they evaluate the economy, they do kind of common sense things like, well, I had more money. My paycheck was growing faster than prices. That was pretty good. So they hear people saying the rich got all the benefit. And they're like, well, I don't know. Maybe I'm rich then because I got benefit. Either way, I like having more money in my pocket, not less. So
I like that better.
I think the publicist thing is kind of over. Like, I get it in New York City. They're going to hear that from people. My kids undoubtedly hear that as well. But I actually think the rest of America got a pretty good message on what works economically, which is why they decided to back a guy who said, I'm going to cut taxes more.
I mean, and I'm going to check that for her. I wasn't surprised by the media reaction. I was just surprised there was so little introspection. And maybe that takes time. But I was watching a lot of MSNBC on election night and, watching some of the late night shows the day after. And Jimmy Kimmel crying and Joy Reid blaming white women in North Carolina and Joe Scarborough and Al Sharpton blaming Hispanic and black men.
Wow.
I'm like, maybe it's two things. Maybe one, it's the policies, and maybe two, it's the candidate. And maybe voters didn't find the authenticity and the policy fixes and the ability to answer questions from
those are all
that
kind of
candidate.
basic things, are things you have to do in your life. You get asked a question on a job interview, you got to answer it.
Yes.
You got to be able to explain what you want to do.
What would you do differently? What's your biggest mistake?
You want to sell a product to a customer, you got to tell them why it's a good product. I mean, people do this all the time in their lives. They know they have to, or they don't make sales. They don't have a job. So when a candidate for the biggest job, arguably, in America can't do that, you lose confidence.
Yeah.
And the fact that you would blame all these different groups, like, talk about compounding your problems. Why would you blame folks for not voting for you?
Who've always
voted for you, I guess.
So loyal. So maybe don't look at them as being disloyal. Maybe look at their choices and go, what have we done wrong?
Right. I want to listen to you. I don't want to blame you. I want to listen. And that's like the thing in politics. The knee-jerk reaction is to want to blame the people who don't support you. And the healthy thing to do is to listen to them and say, what did I get wrong? But, here's the great thing about capitalism and actually just, political liberty is people who wallow and just spend all their time coping. They're going to lose all the resources and all the opportunities they have to do things in the world. And those things are going to migrate to the people who are active, who want to work, who want to invest, who want to build, who want to listen. And so in some ways, I'm like, you wallow all you want. If you've got bad ideas and your way of dealing with your bad ideas is to blame other people, you're just going to become increasingly irrelevant. And that is a good thing for America. The people who work, the people who save, the people who build into their communities are going to gain more resources and more and that's the world we're going to become, is those people, not the wallowers. And great, amen to that.
But the people who were honest, and there were some people on CNN, and they were like, even Bernie Sanders, the Democrat Party used to be the party of working class people.
Yeah.
Now it is Trump Republicans.
Right.
And, at least be honest about the shift. And I saw one woman on Twitter like, I'm sick of being held hostage by undereducated Americans. And it's like, they have just as much right to vote. And there are many more of them than, chin-stroking, condescending PhDs who would love the country to be run by technocrats. I got the benefit of grad school and all this stuff. Okay. So, and I'm thankful for that. But I have such a problem with people saying that because you didn't go to a classroom, you are undereducated. I mean, that to me is that if you just lost this election, one of the things you should ask yourself is, where is America being educated rightly, helpfully right now? How does that happen? And I actually don't think it happens as much in the traditional spheres of college. I think it happens in the businesses, in the marketplace, where people are coming together with new technology and new ideas, solving problems for other people, and in the process of that, learning how to function as responsible adults. Like, that is the classroom of America right now. And these people are smart. They're not dumb. They're not undereducated. See, that's what makes me so mad is like, this burning curiosity is being condescended to.
Don't go anywhere. More Kennedy Saves the World right after this.
And that's why people listen to Joe Rogan's
Yeah.
podcast for 3 hours, because he does have interesting conversations with people
Yeah.
who see the world in a different way. They are non-traditionalists. And, sometimes they're athletic, sometimes they're capitalists, but
Right.
they have a story to tell.
Yeah.
And, he's not trying to project his vision or his politics on them. He's really actively listening. And that's something we have lost.
He's activating curiosity. I mean,
Yes.
people listen to Joe Rogan. I mean, I've listened to Joe Rogan. My wife listens. You don't listen to it and say, everything that's said here, I'm going to agree with and immediately implement into my life. You don't do that. You listen to it and you evaluate the argument.
And then you bring that up at dinner later with friends, and you go, I just heard this really interesting thing. And that's what makes society better. Like, you don't have to agree with everyone on everything, but you never know where these moments of inspiration are going to come from. Because if you hear something like that and you go, you know what, that person's absolutely right, and there's a hole here in my community. So what if I started a business that took that and sort of injected it into a place that doesn't have any of it?
Exactly.
Like, it could really benefit. And so, and this is something else that I've been dying to talk to you about. So my tour manager / sexy teenage boyfriend and I were sitting having coffee one morning, and we read the news and go back and forth, and there was an article about how economies in Western Europe are just not doing as well as the U.S. But what parts of the economy are doing the best in America? The parts where there are innovation and the free market, where the government cannot touch and screw with. But my fear is that there will be statists who get in there and oppressively keep down the parts of the free market that will keep the engine of America running.
Ever-present threat. It's present on the left for sure. It's present in some parts of the right as well, which gets me a little bit nervous. But the secret sauce to what you're describing is the ability for people, and this connects to what we were just talking about, is the ability for people who are on nobody's radar to prove they can do things that nobody ever thought possible. I mean, that is the secret sauce of capitalism. And that's why those parts of the economy that don't get touched by regulation are so surprisingly cool. Because
like what? Look, give us some examples.
The part that's most exciting to me is everything in the like services sector space. Okay, anything touching like the plumbing, the heating, the lighting, the electrical, everything having to do with the physical spaces that we inhabit, to me is one of the most interesting spots in America. It's actually in a weird way one of the spots where the smart private equity money has gravitated to fastest.
Interesting.
Because there's so much innovation and so much opportunity and so much service. But what happens in that space is you get guys, young men, a lot of them are young men, no college education, probably weren't standout high school students, because high schools stink, frankly, and the way they do education stinks. But they're smart guys. They have intelligences that don't get measured by the system. And you've got great entrepreneurs who understand that, because they built a business like this, and they go out and find these guys and they attract them and they bring them in. And there's a lot of finishing school that has to happen. You got to show up on time. You got to work hard. You got to get things right. Okay. But they create these young, and I bring them into my house, and when they help out, and all of a sudden these guys are becoming the most productive, stable people in our society.
But demonized at the same time.
Just totally totally demonized. Some people demonize them. You're right. Some people ignore them.
Yes.
Some people underestimate what they're capable of. Some people think they're stupid because they don't agree. But I promise you, a guy who's fixing your boiler is not stupid.
No.
He understands physics. He understands mechanics. He understands science better than you do, almost assuredly, even if you've got a biology degree, undergraduate biology degree, because he lives it every single day, and it's got to work.
Yes.
And I find that so inspiring. And I just think we're in a moment now where we can make the choice to say those guys are heroes, and we're going to give them every opportunity to succeed.
And, I think to that end, people are sick of it. They're sick of being ignored.
Yeah.
And they want a shift. Because, I just look back at these big blue cities and the things that aren't working and the things that really want to work, but they can't. And I always go back to the Portland City Council doesn't allow business owners on the city council because they don't want anyone who's got a vested interest in the economic success of the place to have a say in policy, which is so stupid because Portland has like, amazing restaurants.
Oh, yeah.
And, it's like great coffee shops
Yeah.
and designers and, these people who always wanted to keep Portland weird, but they don't let Portland thrive because the state is getting in the way. And then they allow homelessness and
Yeah.
mentally ill drug addicts to run the place with impunity.
God, what a shame. I mean, what a shame to discount what the bulk of America does every single day.
Yeah.
With their lives. I mean, that's what creative people do. It's like you want to have a car, but you don't want to put gas in the tank. Like, these people are the fuel.
Or they're outlawing gas.
Yeah, or whatever. My metaphors are getting old now, I guess, in this world.
That's the thing. Like, whatever it is that would drive your engine, they will find a way. And that's what I don't want to happen.
Yeah.
It's like even the gig economy.
Yeah.
And the Elizabeth Warrens were like, well, we have to shut down TaskRabbit and Uber because it's working. And it gives people choices. That's awful.
We're at an inflection point where we'll either choose to reward people seeking their way forward in their vocations in their lives. We'll reward that, encourage it, or we'll say they're being oppressed in the act of doing that. And if we choose the oppression route, we're going to get the European thing.
Yeah.
Right? And
These
if we
stagnant economies with frustrated, depressed people.
And it's this fake sense of like, I care for you. I don't want you to be exploited. Like, you don't care.
Yeah.
You do not care. If you cared, you would say, well, I wonder why this person is trying to do TaskRabbit, what they're learning and how they're growing, what money they're making, what their plans are next. Nobody ever asks that question. They just assume somebody it's a very static view of the world. They take a snapshot of the world and say, you're here right now. You must be oppressed. And they never ask the question, well, wait a sec. Play it forward over 10 years. And where do you go if you're affirmed in your quest to find prosperity, right? And that is, I think, the beauty of capitalism, and those who have thought most interestingly about capitalism are the ones who understand the dynamism of it, and that you cannot take a snapshot of the world and say, this is how it's always going to be.
Yes. Or a snapshot of a particular group of people.
Or a group of people.
And say, this defines everyone in your group.
Or
Therefore,
industry.
we are going to craft policy that ultimately will not lift you up, because I don't know that government has the ability to do that.
Yeah.
Getting out of the way is the only thing that has. So it's funny, on a final note, I saw Gavin Newsom at the night before the Correspondents' Dinner last year. And I went up to him and he goes, oh, here we go. And he was like, you going to make fun of me? And I was like, no. I said, I'm going to give you a recipe to allow your state to succeed.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay, what's that? I said, it's very simple. Cut taxes and cut spending. And he goes, oh, cut taxes and cut spending. Yeah. And I said, yes, that's exactly right. And I said it again, cut taxes and cut spending. And he was like, yeah. Nah. And I walked away.
Well, it's because you've asked him to do the one thing he can never do, and that is relinquish power.
Yes.
Because taxes and spending are his power.
That's a great point.
That's it.
Yes.
You want me to give up my power?
Yeah.
I have a good life. I go out to eat when everybody else has to stay home. You
And
want me to give that up?
I amassed even more power during the pandemic. There's no way I'm giving that up.
Nope, that's the problem.
Yeah.
It's a power game.
Well, there's a
This is a powerful
solution
drink.
at the bottom of every powerful drink cup to spicy mules and beyond, Brenberg, and to American prosperity and innovation.
And to Kennedy.
Delightful. This has been Kennedy Saves the World, along with Brian Brenberg. I'm Kennedy. Listen ad-free with a Fox News Podcast Plus subscription on Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Prime members can listen to this show ad-free on the Amazon Music app. Oh, go ahead and leave me a review while you're there. I'd love to hear what you have to say. You've been listening to Kennedy Saves the World on the Fox News Podcast Network.